will then roam around Bangalore, finding Narayan Murthy, finding Aziz Premji, and finding other people of that caliber who will constitute a cabinet of talent, even if they have nothing to do with the people of India. Indeed, because they have nothing to do with the people of India. Now, if this is the danger, how can we face it? I think the only way is by taking democracy down to the grassroots. Why not empower every community to secure its own entitlements? The problem there is that while this is provided for now in our constitution and in the law of the country, and Karnataka, this state, has been the pioneer in this matter for what happened in the 1980s under Chief Minister Ramakrishna Hegde and his remarkable Minister for Local Government, Abdur Nazir Saab. These two people showed the country how our country could be saved. And it truly is tragic that in a state like yours, which was the pioneering state, after Ghorpadeji, we seem to be seeing a retraction rather than progress in the direction of devolving power to the people. And one of the reasons why they get away with it is by saying that the people and the people's representatives don't have the education and the skills to actually be able to run themselves. And up to a point, this is true. They need help. And who can provide that help better than the Rotarians? You in this district belong to the most successful Panchayati Raj state in India. And what you really need to do is to fan out, and you're from there, because each of your clubs belongs to a collection of communities, many of them urban, but several of them also rural. And if you were to adopt these clubs, these communities, in the sense of providing the required information to the Gram Sabha when it meets, and telling them what are the questions that they could ask on the basis of the bogus accounts and the bogus statements presented to them by the Sarpanch and the BDO gathering together, then they will ask the question, why have you spent 50,000 rupees on this bus stand when we can't find a bus stand? Today, it takes 5 years before the Comptroller and Auditor General is able to discover 1 or 2 unbuilt bus stands for which money has been spent. But the community itself would know whether or not the bus stand has been built. And if the bus stand has in fact been built, then to ask the question, why did it cost 50,000 rupees here when a similar bus stand was built by the next village at 35,000? Is it not because the president of the village panchayat gave the contract to his son-in-law? So the real social audit is the way of reducing corruption in our country and bringing about greater transparency and ensuring responsiveness. And in all this, because the Rotary movement is so widely spread in the country, and specifically in Karnataka, these institutions of local self-government have a history now of 25 or 30 years. It is more possible to make this particular district the model for showing how the Rotarians can help the unsuccessful Indian at least become self-governing. So the mistakes they make then become their mistakes, and the successes they have become their successes. I therefore do believe very sincerely that a combination of this grouping of successful Indians in order to assist the unsuccessful Indian secure his entitlements to move towards enrichment is the only feasible way forward of preserving our democracy and ensuring our development. Localization is the answer in the globalizing world. And that brings me directly to bridging continents. For bridging continents is taking place through the internet. It is taking place through the global spread of capital. It is taking place through the creation of global markets, and it is taking place through connections between main factories located perhaps on one continent and ancillaries that are located half a world away. All this is leading to a bridging of continents that we have not experienced almost ever before. Yes, within the technology of the time, the Persian Empire was a globalization exercise, for it did stretch all the way from the Hindu Kush to the Mediterranean and beyond. It was also true of the Roman Empire, which actually stretched from the Atlantic to the Mediterranean and beyond. There have been periods, the British, for example, successfully established an empire of which they said with considerable pride that the sun never sets on the British Empire. And it was Krishna Menon who replied that that's because even God wouldn't trust the British in the dark. So there have been experiments in globalization in the past, but never has the world been as interconnected by technology and at the human level as we are seeing now. Therefore, I think the challenge before India is not so much one of bridging continents, because we're fairly adept at it. As it is, Bangalore is the leading exporter of computer coolies to California. So what am I going to teach you about bridging continents? But while we may be expert in bridging continents, are we capable of building culverts over canals? We live in the least united subcontinent of the world. We certainly live in the most fractured continent of the world. Our problem is not relations with the United States of America or with Peru. Our problem is not of relations with African countries. Our problem is relations with our own neighbors. And there, the prejudices and the hatreds with which we have imbued ourselves, and I think Rotarians are probably the most guilty in this regard, because the Rotarians belong to our intellectual class. And our intellectual class, the ones who are allegedly the ones who are most open-minded, are the ones who are most close-minded. If I were of a mind to do so, I would ask this audience, how many of you think that Pakistanis are nice chaps? And I expect maybe 4 or 5 eccentrics would raise their hands. If I asked you, how many Pakistanis do you think are ghastly people? There would be a wide applause for this. We have a bad relationship with Pakistan. We have a bad relationship with Bangladesh. We have a bad relationship with Sri Lanka. We used to have a pretty bad relationship with Nepal. Fortunately, Bhutan is on our side, and I'm glad to report that Maldives have no objections. But otherwise, we seem to know how to build friendship with Paraguay, but are completely bewildered about how to build friendship with Pakistan, which but for an accident of history would have contained all our own fellow citizens. I do not think India is going to be able to play its due role in the world, or even in Asia, unless we learn how to build bridges to our nearest neighbors. So long as India hyphenates itself with Pakistan through a bridge of enmity, the rest of the world will always hyphenate us and say, but how can India become a permanent member of the Security Council, if it's going to use that in order to cut its enemy, Pakistan? It's never going to happen. It is in our own interest to make ours a subcontinent of peace, tranquility, and harmony. And that can most effectively be done at the human level. So while I'm delighted that you have here representatives of Rotary International from 3 continents away, it breaks my heart that whether it's this particular conference or any other conference of Rotarians, we don't see many Pakistani Rotarians. We don't see anyone. Good. We should be having half this audience filled with those who are from South Asia. We should be working towards that. And the Rotarians are more capable of doing this than anyone else, because you have the means to go across and you have the means to entertain them when they come across here. Therefore, my plea with you is that while for an India based on Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, there is no difficulty in bridging continents, we do have a major problem in our immediate neighborhood. And that is a neighborhood towards which we must look. And if we look towards this neighborhood, we build up a subcontinent, a South Asia, which is a model of harmony and tranquility, peace and goodwill and brotherhood, then perhaps we would be better placed to try and teach the world a lesson or two about peace and brotherhood. Until then, it does sound rather hypocritical that we urge the United States and the Soviet Union to sink their differences and are unable to sink our differences with even Pakistan, let alone Sri Lanka. So let's move in that direction, people to people. The bridge has to be of people. It cannot just be of concrete. And it cannot be in cyberspace. It has to be here on the ground. And to build that, I believe Rotary could play a very major role if it understood that globalization without localization amounts to alienation. We just have to ensure, and that brings me to my favorite enemy in the literary world. It's Thomas Friedman, who wrote a book called The World is Flat. And it begins here in Bangalore. It says that as Mr. Friedman, I had never been on a golf course, although I have been Minister of Sports. It's one of my great prides. But Mr. Friedman is apparently balancing himself on his 2 feet with a stick between them. It's called a golf club, I'm told. And the technical expression is teeing off. That's the first paragraph of the book. He's teeing off at the Bangalore Golf Club. And as he takes his swing, he suddenly notices that all around him are billboards announcing Coca-Cola and Reebok shoes, and so on and so forth. So he whips out his mobile phone and he rings his wife and he says, "Gee, honey, the world is flat." Now, the Bangalore Golf Club is the one place in which almost no Bangalorean can enter. So leave alone the world being flat, even the golf course is not flat. And so this illusion that successful people, by interconnecting, somehow constitute the globalization of the mind is a dangerous delusion. Most people in my constituency have never been to Delhi. If they haven't been to Delhi, so many of them have never been to Chennai. Thousands of them have never been to Mailaduturai. Now, what are we talking about globalization? Yeah, many Californians have been to Mailaduturai. But how many Mailaduturians have been to Tanjore? This is the nature of the problem, that some of us are well connected. We're connected by wire and connected by wireless. But we need to bring everybody into this system. And therefore, the localization involving the empowerment of communities is a necessary preliminary to the building of relations through continents and across continents. And thus, building community is the necessary preliminary to truly bridging continents. Thank you very much. It's been an honor.